Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Bate, joined by Ricardo Martinez-Paz. We are at the last week of the NFL season. The Eagles are still playing. They're doing more than playing. They're fighting for a Super Bowl title at this point, and we're going to be breaking down the matchup, diving deep into this one. How else can you do it? It's the last week of the season. We have to go all out, and that's just what we're going to do here on the show today. So, Ricardo, we are less than a week away from the big game.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now leading up to it? Job's not done. We know that from last episode, but how are you feeling right now?
At this point in time, I would say I feel solid. Like I don't know. I'm not like, I know on game day I'm gonna be really stressed. But right now I'm in like a fairly decent mood about it. I mean, obviously this is gonna be the biggest test for the Eagles defense all season. It's Patrick Mahomes. And I mean that offense just puts up points. And I feel like it could turn into a track meet. Honestly, it could be a shootout. So it's I'm excited for the game overall. I don't expect very many turnovers, if anything. But lots of fireworks. I'm sure Andy Reid's going to dial up some like trick play that we haven't seen all season long or something like that. Like there's going to be big plays here.
The anxiousness, though, are you just like ready for the game to be here, or are you just kind of chilling at this point, taking it one day at a time?
Surprisingly, just chilling at the I'm just kind of taking in all like the media stuff, Super Bowl media stuff, the Eagles Twitter account stuff. So I'm kind of just enjoying it. Yeah, like you said, one day at a time. We'll see where things go, but I know like as it gets closer, once it's like tomorrow or like Saturday, I'm gonna be feeling it a bit more anxious, but yeah.
I mean, tomorrow's the big day. Everybody's going to be talking about it on any TV show or radio show you listen to, and then we're just going to have all day Saturday to just think it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and some of the talk has been that there hasn't been as much hype surrounding the game as maybe like years past. I don't know if you feel that way quite the same, because obviously it's your team, so you're fully ingrained in everything that's being put out there regarding the game. But I don't know. Do you get that sense at all or not really?
I mean, considering we're surrounded by a lot of New York fans, Giants fans specifically, I can see it around her like immediate surroundings. Yeah, I can sense that. I don't know. I kind of do feel like it's not being talked about all that much, maybe because the Eagles are hated and the Chiefs have won or have been to the Super Bowl the last few years. I don't know, but there's so many storylines that are so intriguing in this game. It's just that whether it's Andy Reid against his former coach, two black QBs squaring off against each other for the first time in the Super Bowl. And I don't know. There's so much to talk about that I don't know like why it's not being addressed more. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's a few days away still. I don't know, but
it's got the potential to be a fantastic matchup. And yeah. I mean, you referenced one of the storylines being these two quarterbacks, and I think that's where we should go next, because I think one of the biggest aspects of this game is the fact that both of these quarterbacks are kind of coming into it with some question marks about their health. What's the status of Patrick Mahomes' ankle? Jalen Hurts, is the shoulder 100%? So I think that's kind of where we have to start with things is kind of address the health of both of these guys and what we're expecting. Obviously, both teams are keeping it close to the chest, what the actual health status is of these guys. But let's start with Jalen Hurts first, because he was taken off of the injury report completely prior to the conference championship. And I don't know. I feel like people have kind of raised the question more and more after the fact of, well, was he 100% in that game? I heard, some people speculating, well, he was missing throws short, and on deep balls, he was throwing it a little bit long. So, I mean, I don't know. Have you heard anything about his health? Obviously, with the extra week of rest, it's going to be a benefit to both of these guys. But obviously, the health of Jalen Hurts is a huge factor in this game.
Yeah, I don't think he's fully healthy yet. That's something. I mean, he's been playing through the injury since really he came back. I mean, he's been saying that after like every game, that he's not 100%, or he's just. I mean, I believe that. I don't think he's using that as like some sort of tactic or something like the Chiefs let their guard down or anything like that. So I think he's definitely been playing through it. Against the Niners 2 weeks ago, almost or less than 2 weeks ago, he was missing a few deep throws that he normally makes. I'm not too concerned about it because of the extra week off now, and it's something that I don't think is gonna hinder him in this game all that much. He's gonna be running. They're gonna be designing runs for him. He's gonna be throwing. I think he'll be fine in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. It's at the point now where it's like, even if he's not 100%, I mean, it's like you're gonna have to just get whatever you can take from him at this point.
Yeah,
That's just the nature of it. Everybody's dealing with some kind of injury, as they say. When you're playing this deep into the season, I mean, obviously, you don't want your quarterback to be dealing with something nagging like this that could, really affect the way that he plays and the precision he has on his passes. But that's just the case of it right now. And the Eagles were able to overcome it last week and still put up 30 points. So, they're going to have to do it again here. And I mean, we can flip it to the other side of the football. And that's Patrick Mahomes, who's dealing with that ankle injury. Obviously, it was hindering him last week again, in the conference championship game against the Bengals. And now he's got the extra week of rest. So he should be a little bit more mobile. But I mean, we were kind of talking about this on last week's show. The fact that, this is an injury that doesn't just heal over the course of a couple weeks. It's something that's still going to be nagging Patrick Mahomes, just not as bad as it was maybe 2 weeks ago.
yeah. I mean, that injury was what, probably 3 weeks ago now. If
About 3 weeks ago.
almost. Yeah. And that's an injury that takes about 6 to 8 weeks and for a high ankle sprain, maybe longer. But he's definitely going to be limited compared to what he normally would be. Um, I'm still sure he's going to be making some kind of ridiculous plays, extending plays, and because that's just what he does. He's just even when he was injured, against the Bengals, he had that run at the end of the game and set him up for the game-winning field goal.
Point.
So I mean, he's going to play through it. Obviously, he's a warrior. I mean, he even shouted out his I can't remember if it was like personal trainer or if it was I can't remember her name, who like was helping him rehab his injury. Um, he's again, he's going to be a threat regardless, even if he is like less mobile. It's going to be such a tough task for this Eagles defense, I think.
Yeah, and I mean that may be just the case of it, where it's like when you brought up that point against how he just scrambled against the Bengals. I mean, this is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have been this dynamic combo for so long that even when Patrick Mahomes is needing to play through an injury like that, they're gonna find ways to still attack the defense. They'll play to Patrick Mahomes' other strengths, and like you said, he still showed he's capable of playing through it as he did last week against the Bengals when he had to pick up that huge conversion late in the game, where obviously it was accentuated by the penalty on Joseph Asai. But
Yeah.
yeah, clearly Patrick Mahomes was still able to start that off with his legs and use his mobility. So a couple other injury notes I wanted to bring up here real quick, and you can add on to anything, but these were kind of the main ones I wanted to touch on.
Mhm.
A big one for the Chiefs is the fact that L'Jarius Sneed is expected to play in this game and be fully healthy. So that's big. I think he only played 4 snaps last week against the Bengals, so he's expected to have a bigger workload this week now that he's kind of back recovered from his injury. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire also activated off of the IR. I believe Mecole Hardman was put on the IR. It was one of the
Yep.
receivers that was put on the IR in conjunction with that move. Not sure how much he's going to play. Isaiah Pacheco, I feel like, has kind of elevated himself into that lead back role in Cincinnati, but just another weapon that the Eagles kind of have to game plan for. And then I don't know if you want to flip over to the Eagles, any big ones that you feel are kind of pressing at this point.
There were some players limited. I think one of them was I'm blanking on who it was. I could pull up the injury report right
Well,
now, but
I
it's not. Yeah, they're not really like this is the healthiest the Eagles have been all season. I believe Avonte Maddox was on that list,
yeah.
but he's
Yeah,
going to play.
I think Maddox he's going to play. I mean, the other one is Lane Johnson, but we touched on this last week. Like, he's just playing through like a significant injury right now. Like, the dude is just playing. The dude is going out there and playing like a monster, not allowing any sacks or pressures, anything. And he's going to have significant surgery in the offseason. Like,
Oh yeah,
it's mind-boggling how well he's playing right now.
yeah. It's crazy how healthy this team is right now. And Nick Sirianni pointed this out in the press conference. I think it was yesterday. It was like, sometimes you just get really lucky with injuries. This is the most fortunate the Eagles have been with injuries. Last season, it was a totally different story. It was like 13 different offensive line combinations, the most in the NFL last year. And that's a totally different story now. I mean, I think this offensive line's played together for the majority of the season. A few lingering injuries here and there, but for the most part, they've been together. And this team overall also has, Gardner Johnson suffered an injury. A few other players, but they all have come back. None of them have been significant enough to keep them out, you know, through the Super Bowl. So again, just the injury luck has been on the Eagles' side this season.
It's been huge. It's been such a huge factor, and I mean that it's having your players healthy is huge. There's no other way to say it. And yeah, like you're right. There's a couple guys that are dealing with issues, but overall, to not have anybody that's 100% out for this game is huge for the Eagles. It's massive, and that's going to be certainly a benefit that they have going into it. But let's get into the numbers a little bit. Let's get into the matchups a little bit, and dive into this. I don't know if there's anything that you particularly have your eye on that you want to start with, but I'll let you kind of start things off, and then we'll just let the conversation roll from point to point and see where we get going with this.
I mean, I feel like the biggest thing to watch is the Chiefs' offensive line versus the Eagles' defensive line. We know the numbers now. It's 70 sacks, most for the Eagles, third most all time, which is crazy. 26 sacks allowed by the Chiefs' offensive line, which is third fewest. And I feel like Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator, do a good job of, scheming players open, getting the ball out quick, not letting Mahomes take those unnecessary hits. And he also just has such good pocket presence. It's really tough to bring him down, especially I think that interior offensive line, the interior part of the offensive line is definitely their strength. Their tackles are, I would say, the weaker points, especially Andrew Wiley. Hassan Reddick's going to be lining up against him. Wiley allowed 9 sacks in the season, which was fourth most. So that's going to be a huge mismatch for him. Having to deal with Hassan Reddick, who's been playing like a madman the whole season, especially in the playoffs. And
the playoffs alone. I mean, it feels like he's playing some of his best football of the season. And this was a guy that had 16 sacks on the year. I mean, just in the 2 games alone, what did he have here? 3.5 sacks, 4 QB hits, and a fumble and a forced fumble that he also recovered. I mean, the guy's playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, and then you look on the other side, Orlando Brown, who's not the most consistent player. He's allowed, I think it was 4 sacks in the season, 6 penalties overall, it's all right. I mean, that's a solid number. It's not, it could be worse. But Brandon Graham, and I feel like Josh Sweat is someone who's going under the radar a bit because of the attention Hassan Reddick's been getting. And I mean, Josh Sweat's more of like a speed rusher and can bend really well. And he's just really good. I don't know. His mechanics are really good. It could cause trouble for Orlando Brown overall. He had 11 sacks too on this season. Like that's how under the radar he is.
Nothing to sweat at. Double-digit sacks is nothing to. No pun intended. Nothing to sweat at. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's going to be a challenge for those tackles. The interior is going to be a bigger challenge for Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Milton Williams. I mean, there's so much. Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Jordan Davis. There's so much depth though for the Eagles. It's so intriguing.
You know what I love about this matchup so much more than the ones we've talked about in recent weeks when it comes to the battle in the trenches is that we've always talked about, well, which offensive line is going to dominate? Is it going to be the offensive line pushing back the Eagles defense against the run, or is it going to be someone else? But the fact in this game that we're getting an Eagles defensive line that's middle of the pack when it comes to stopping the run, and you've got a Chiefs offense that's middle of the pack when it comes to rushing the football.
Yep.
We're really seeing strength on strength here of the Chiefs passing attack being what they want to do, what they're good at, and the Eagles rushing the quarterback. 70 sacks on the year is incredible. That's what they want to do, is get to the quarterback and get pressure on them. So it's such a different aspect where it's going to come down to, can the Chiefs offensive line protect Patrick Mahomes, or is the Eagles defense going to continue to feast on it? And dude, you brought up the matchup with Hassan Reddick and even, Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham on the other side. Like that is going to be the battle that decides this thing. I mean, it makes me think back to 2020. I believe that was the year when Tampa Bay and the Chiefs met in the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs had a couple of backup tackles in there. I think Mike Remmers was one of them that was playing in that game. But they were down to like their second string tackles, and Shaq Barrett and the Buccaneers defensive line got after Patrick Mahomes and made his life hell. I don't know if it's going to be at the same level because the Buccaneers were also completely penetrating through the interior of the defensive line, but I think that we could see Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and even Robert Quinn lining up on the outside a little bit. I think we could see them have a little bit. I don't want to say a field day, but they could be a major factor in deciding this game, and they could ultimately be the ones that do decide this game if the Chiefs are unable to protect Patrick Mahomes, especially on the ankle that's been banged up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Andrew Wiley, he actually played in that Super Bowl and got kind of destroyed by Shaq Barrett.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a miss. I mean, it's yeah, not a great look for him. Obviously, it's what 2 or 3 years now removed from that, but he's still not exactly the best right tackle. We still see like penalties. We still see like the holding calls and his inability sometimes to get off his set. And yeah, like you said, Hassan Reddick, he can be a game wrecker. He could absolutely, like I said this on someone else's podcast, like even before the conference championships, like I don't know if I was joking or not, but I was like, if any defensive player were to win Super Bowl MVP, it would be Hassan Reddick. The last person to do that obviously was Von Miller back against the Panthers. It was back in 2015. So I think the Chiefs are definitely going to game plan around him. They're going to try and limit him,
which puts the onus even more on Josh Sweat to win on the other side.
Yeah, and I think he'll win. I mean, I think he can win, just in general. And I feel like they're going to be running a lot of 2-3 tight end sets to try and chip Hassan Reddick more specifically, whether that be Travis Kelce or any of their other tight ends. I mean, you can't leave him unblocked like they did against, like the Niners did when knocked Purdy out of the game. So, yeah, you're gonna the Chiefs better have a plan for Reddick, otherwise it's gonna be a long day for Mahomes.
And even when they do have a plan in place, it's not like that they're going to be able to chip him on each and every single time they drop back to pass.
Yeah.
So Hassan Reddick's going to have his opportunities to win there still. We talked a little bit, and I referenced it a little bit, that, this with the strength of this Chiefs offense really being the fact that they want to throw the football. That also plays into the fact that the Eagles have a really talented secondary. So I want to talk a little bit about the matchups of this Chiefs passing attack, specifically with their wide receivers and Travis Kelce against James Bradbury, Darius Slay, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and this entire Eagles secondary. How do you see that shaping up? Is there any mismatch that perhaps maybe the Chiefs can exploit? I mean, I think Travis Kelce is kind of a walking mismatch at this point in his career.
Yeah, I was going to say Travis Kelce is for sure the biggest one. The other thing I think that could be a problem is the speed of the Chiefs receivers. They're not great receivers. Like, they're not complete receivers overall. They're more speed, like Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith-Schuster, a couple others who I think, you really got to bring them down once they catch the ball, because they could break a long one. That's what I'm most concerned about. I'm not necessarily worried about the downfield stuff or the deep shots, anything like that. It's just keeping the receiver in front of you, getting them down to the ground, and trying to limit their yards after catch, because I feel like they kind of feed off of that. They live off that offense, and that keeps the chains moving. That keeps them within a manageable third down. So that's something that maybe they press the receivers at the line of scrimmage, which I feel like the Eagles don't do all that much. They're a bit more of a zone team where they just like to sit back. But I think they got to mix some man coverage in there a bit more this time around, especially because those receivers aren't that great, other than speed and I mean, really, speed. I would say overall they're not that experienced either. Kadarius Toney specifically, but
yeah. And I think if you can find a way to have Travis Kelce double teamed as much as possible, I mean, I'm not saying anything new here by putting that out there, but I mean, the fact that Mahomes is a little bit hobbled, you're not really going to have to worry about him scrambling as much. Obviously, he can still get around in the pocket, but maybe that frees up another body that can kind of stick with Mahomes along with whoever is, stick with Kelce along with whoever is covering him. So potentially one way to slow him down, but really it's just about trying to limit him so much as stopping him altogether. Because I mean, Andy Reid's going to find ways to scheme him open one way or another.
Yeah, and I just want to add that the Eagles on the season held tight ends to an 80.6 passer rating, so that was fifth best in the league. They limited T.J. Hawkinson to just 38 yards, Dalton Schultz to 43 in the second encounter. They had George Kittle 32, albeit Purdy was down, Josh Johnson went down, but still they do a pretty solid job. But Travis Kelce's the best in the league. It's the chemistry.
I mean, we can be fair here. I mean, Avonte Maddox is one of the best slot corners in the league, and I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is also a utility man back there who's been a contributor in slowing down tight ends as well, along with some of their speedy linebackers. So, the numbers don't lie on that. The Eagles have been successful in slowing down tight ends. Travis Kelce is arguably the greatest tight end of all time, but certainly still something that goes a little bit in the Eagles' favor here. They do have the players in place that can potentially limit his damage to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough because
it's no easy task.
Yeah, I mean the Mahomes and Kelce have option routes in a lot of their plays on their call sheet. So it's just once one reads the other, like they're just so in sync. It's so hard to stop those unscripted things too. So
absolutely. I don't know if I really have much more to look at the matchups when it comes to the Eagles defense and the Chiefs offense. I don't know if there was anything else that you had on your mind before we kind of flip the ball over to the other side.
I mean, in terms of stopping Mahomes, that's going to be just tough because Mahomes can beat you in any way. If you blitz him, he's, I believe, fifth in the league. Yeah, he's fifth best in the league, 113.1 passer rating, 16 touchdowns, which is first. I mean, I would stay away from blitzing, and the Eagles aren't the most. They don't blitz very much anyway. So sitting back is. I mean, like I said, they're gonna have to mix in more man coverage zone. I mean, if they play zone, they're just gonna get picked apart by Mahomes. That's just how I see it.
And if you can get pressure on Mahomes without having to blitz, I mean, that's kind of become the recipe with how you can stop him. Yeah. And if there's any team that can do that, it is this Eagles front four that, like we've said, they've been able to dominate all year. Even if you take out one guy on that defensive line, you've got guys across the board who can get to the quarterback, which is what makes this matchup so fascinating on this side of the football. Is it really is the Eagles' strength going up against the Chiefs' strength. It's strength on strength. It's not like this is an Chiefs team that just wants to run the football down your throat, or it's an Eagles team that stopping the run is their specialty, and all of a sudden they're going up against this high octane passing offense. It really is strength on strength when it comes to the Eagles wanting to defend the pass and get to the quarterback, and the Chiefs wanting to throw the ball all around the field. So that's what I think makes this matchup so entertaining on this side of the ball.
Yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting to watch. So I'm probably going to be like, when it's Mahomes up on offense, I'm probably going to be watching the defensive linemen, see how they perform against the offensive linemen. It's a battle of the big guys. So
battle of the big guys. It feels like it always comes down to that at the end of the day when you boil it down.
Yeah, for real. It's fun to watch though.
Yeah, 100%. So let's flip things over to the Eagles offense a little bit here and how they're going to match up against the Chiefs defense. I think the first and foremost really is the Eagles have been able to beat teams in a plethora of ways all throughout the season, whether it's running the football, whether it's getting their wide receivers involved in throwing the ball, or whether it's really just hammering run pass options and getting Hurts scrambling with his legs. What do you think is kind of the main way you see the Eagles offense attacking this defense?
Well, I'll start off by saying this. The Chiefs are the second. They sacked the QB the second most time in the league, 55, 15 behind the Eagles. So,
it's like, hey, it's impressive that they're, in a normal year, they'd be competing for the top spot of getting to the quarterback. But I mean, like, the fact that the Eagles are have 15 more sacks on the season, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know about how dominant the Eagles defense has been. Anyway, continue your point.
Yeah. But the Eagles got to slow it down. They did so against the Niners. Hurts was only sacked once, and they ran the ball like incredibly well, better than I thought. And it's so this Eagles offense just knows how to adapt in game. Like the Niners, there were a few instances where the Eagles threw certain plays, certain run plays against the Niners, and on the next two plays that they ran the same sort of scheme, um, the Eagles adjusted it and they scored on one of those adjustments that they made. I think it was Miles Sanders who scored on it. And I mean, it's just they're so hard to stop because, like you said, they can beat you in so many different ways. I don't know if the run game is going to be as big of a factor in this one as the passing game will be. I think the Chiefs having rookie cornerbacks. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed's going to play their most experienced corner. Um, use that to your advantage. Devontae Smith is, as AJ Brown said, wide receiver 1B. So, I mean, using him to your advantage. I mean, you got Dallas Goedert. The Chiefs were one of the worst teams against tight ends this season. I think they were 29th. So it's the Eagles have the advantage in terms of skill position players. I'm sure that if Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, dials up blitzes, that the Eagles are going to have, say, Kenneth Gainwell, on a check down, in the flat or something like that, because I believe the Chiefs defense likes to blitz more than the average team. I think they're like top 10 in that in percentage, blitz percentage, something like that.
Yeah, I also definitely have my eye on the matchup of this Chiefs secondary, specifically the corners, going up against AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and obviously the rest of the Eagles wide receiver group. But specifically out wide, I mean, you mentioned it. The Eagles, the Chiefs have been starting, rookies really throughout the season. I mean, Trent McDuffie's been lining up in the slot a lot, and Jalen Watson, who was a late round pick, he played 100% of the snaps last week against the Bengals, and I mean that resulted in T. Higgins going for 83 yards and a touchdown, and Jamar Chase having 75 yards on 6 receptions. So, not bad days at all for those Bengals wide receivers. And I think we could see similar numbers be put up by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And, I mean, you mentioned the fact that, the Chiefs have also struggled against tight ends. And Dallas Goedert, I mean, we've seen him, win mismatches all throughout the season. Especially, I feel like in recent weeks, throughout the playoffs and even late in the regular season, there were some mismatches and he was able to capitalize on it. So I certainly like that matchup aspect for the Eagles. And the healthier Jalen Hurts is, the more he's going to be able to be precise with those passes and get the ball into these guys' hands. So I certainly think that's a facet of this side of the football that the Eagles could exploit.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add this that I don't think the Eagles are gonna have problems, moving the ball down the field. But when it comes to the red zone, the Eagles are one of the best, and they have to punch it in. The Eagles are third in the red zone overall this season, and the Chiefs' defense is 31st in the red zone. So I'm not saying that every time they get in the red zone, they're going to punch it in, but they should. In theory, based off the numbers, they should be able to punch it in, especially as I said at the beginning, this could be a track meet. This could be a shootout. So really taking advantage of those red zone opportunities is going to be huge. It's going to be a difference. This game might come down to who has the ball last. It's going to be that close, I think.
Yeah, and any kind of advantage that you have when your offense is on the field, and if there's one like that in the red zone that you have to exploit, you have to take advantage of it. What do you think of the rushing attack? Because we talked about how balanced this Eagles offense is, and even though the Chiefs don't have a terrible run defense, I think they were actually in the upper half of the league here when it came to they were 8th when it came to rushing yards allowed per game against. So not bad. They were tied for 5th actually, with the tied for 5th fewest rushing touchdowns allowed. But I still think that the Eagles are going to have a balanced attack in this one. But how big do you think Miles Sanders' role is going to be?
Man, that is so tough because I feel like he hasn't been getting as many touches as he did during the regular season. I
But
don't
he's
think
still
he's
been effective.
No,
He's
he
still
has.
been
Yeah,
effective.
he has
Yeah.
been. Just hasn't gotten as many, as much volume as in the regular season, but that's fine because Kenneth Gainwell is now in the picture a bit more. But Miles Sanders is going to have to play a factor in it. It's the thing. I probably I'm gonna say this too. I probably should have prefaced with this, but Chris Jones is gonna be such a problem for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I remember and it wasn't last year, but it was I think it was when Carson Wentz was still with the Eagles that he got three and a half sacks or something like that. He like took over the game. So in order to get the running game going, you got to move Frank Clark. I'm sorry, Chris Jones out of the way. You got to get that big man out there. You know what? Just he's just so good. He had what 15 and a half sacks as a D tackle. He's so good against the run. Just so good all around. And I think Miles Sanders, I think it's going to be more of bouncing it to the outside, not running straight at Chris Jones. That's not really going to work, I don't think. So it's going to
And I
be,
think that's where a lot of those option plays for Jalen Hurts are going to come in too. When you're going to try to limit some of the other guys, and when you're forcing guys on the outside to make a decision, that's where really Jalen Hurts is going to have to be the determining factor in those option plays, and that could be a way that they do try to run the football rather than kind of up the gut, like you're saying.
yeah, I think the Eagles are going to pull, or yeah, for the running game, they're going to pull out of their offensive linemen. They've been really good at that, doing traps, trap plays. Really, really good overall. I mean, Jeff Stoutland, the Eagles' offensive line coach, I feel like I'm always preaching him. I think he is the best offensive line coach. And this offensive line is just playing so well. I mean, they took Nick Bosa out of the game essentially when they played the Niners. They took Dexter Lawrence out of the game. He didn't really. I don't think he logged a stat against the Eagles, or he didn't really make much of an impact. But um, I mean, they're obviously the offensive line is definitely going to game plan around Chris Jones. But Miles Sanders, and they're going to have to bounce it outside. When they go outside, they really has to punish the Chiefs defense because other than Chris Jones, I mean, Frank Clark said he's all right. He's solid. George Karlaftis, the rookies, also, he's showing promise. He's not consistent yet, but he's still decent. Carlos Dunlap, he's a veteran, kind of up there in
Yeah.
age, not great
Oh,
necessarily. So,
yeah, Chris Jones.
it's yeah.
I was just going to say, Chris Jones is certainly the guy on that defensive line that you circle, highlight, underline, do whatever you got to do. And I mean, it's also interesting because he had one of the best games of his career last week, specifically in the playoffs, I should say, one of his best career playoff games. I mean, 2 sacks, 3 tackles, 5 quarterback hits. So, I mean, kind of like we were talking about with Hassan Reddick, it's a guy who's playing some of his best football right now. And you just wonder if that, just carries right into this game, or if the Eagles are able to find a way to kind of game plan around him and limit his presence, kind of like they did last week with Nick Bosa. Obviously, it's a different animal of an interior defensive lineman compared to Nick Bosa, who's just trying to get to the quarterback. But still a guy that's the main one that you look at, where it's like this is the guy who could potentially wreck the game for us.
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy about that? Like the 2 sack performance against the Bengals is that was his first playoff sack in I think 15 games, which
Yeah.
I would never have thought because he's just
Neither
that
would I.
good. Yeah, but that's crazy.
Now the question is that the outlier, or is it the fact that okay, he finally got going, and now we're gonna see Chris Jones just kind of unleashed going forward?
I don't think so because the Bengals were without 3 starters, so that was a big reason for it. And I
Yeah,
mean, the Eagles are full strength, so we're mostly full strength at least. So it's going to be a lot tougher for Chris Jones this time around.
yeah, yeah. I agree, and I mean you talked about it too last week. The fact that Jalen Hurts only went down one time against that 49ers defense. This offensive line is playing great football right now. So,
Yeah,
um, I feel like we've kind of broken down all these matchups, and we've talked a lot about Chris Jones. But I mean, just overall, I imagine just overall speaking, generally speaking, you're feeling really good about this offensive line compared to the Chiefs' defensive line as a whole.
yeah. I mean, and just in general, I think the Eagles' offense is more talented than the Chiefs' defense is. I mean, this is the matchup.
The
This is
Chiefs'
the
defense
unit
is
that,
also really young too, man. They're really
yeah,
young.
yeah. This is the unit that has to win. I expect the Chiefs to put up points. I'm not saying the Eagles are gonna, the defense isn't gonna like hold every, or it's just gonna be a lot more difficult. I think the Chiefs are more than capable of putting up points. They were the highest scoring team in the league, I believe. And they were second on third down, so they know how to keep drives going and really wearing defenses out. So it's going to be Man, it's going to be tough for both defenses to stop the opposing offense.
Yeah. Well, and I guess this kind of transitions into the question that, and I feel like we just have to address this question because you've referenced it twice now, and you just said the fact that this could turn into a shootout. But I wrote this down right at the top of the show because I wanted to come back and ask you this: what is better for the Eagles in this game? Is it a shootout or is it more of a scrappy battle where it's back and forth, both defenses are getting stops and the offenses are both finding ways to punch it in? Which is the better outcome? Cuz I don't think it's going to be by any means a defensive stalemate. I think it's either going to be a shootout back and forth drive that comes down to who has the ball last, or it's going to be a scrappy game of, which defense can get a stop and which offense can kind of find a way to feed off of that. So which is the better type of game for the Eagles? Which type of game would you rather see it unfold as?
I mean, if we're talking from a neutral standpoint, I definitely would rather see the offenses, fly, just take off and score a crazy amount of points. But I mean, the Eagles can win anyway. Like, it could be a shootout. It could be, I mean, the Packers game was the first one that came to mind. They won 40 to, I think it was 34, 33. That was a shootout at the Link in Philly. And they've had some tough ones where they had to beat the Colts. That was a gritty win, even though they were down 13-3 at one point. So I think either way, I mean, I'm not really answering the question. It's more of just that I think the Eagles can win in both fashions.
Okay. I personally feel like the more of like a little bit more of a gritty battle is better for the Eagles because the one thing that scares me about the shootout is, again, if this Chiefs offense just can't be stopped, you know, then the question of, well, Jalen Hurts is really going to have to let it rip. And, last week, the Eagles offense, I mean, the Eagles still collectively scored over 30 points last week, but it wasn't on the back of Jalen Hurts by any means. And if it
Yeah.
gets to the point where Jalen Hurts is going to have to sling it around the yard, this is no knock against Jalen Hurts at all because he's proven everything all throughout the season. But the fact that he is playing a little bit hurt, that is what would concern me a little bit if it was a shootout. So I wouldn't mind it from the Eagles' perspective if their defense is getting a few stops and the defenses are kind of both playing well for both teams, because I still think at the end of the day, the Eagles defense is more likely to step up than the Chiefs defense is to step up at a late game situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing is Mahomes threw what I believe 15 interceptions on the season, so maybe he throws one for the Eagles defense. Maybe that's the stop that the Eagles need.
That's true. And the Eagles
And
were what, top 5 in interceptions this season? I think they had like 17 or something like that on the year.
yeah, I believe the Eagles were third, second or third in that
I
category.
did write
But
this down. The Eagles were 4th according to my notes, but they might have
okay,
been tied
yeah.
for 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's certainly one of. I mean, Jalen Hurts doesn't give the ball away very much. It's. I mean, the only Mahomes is prone to it. Hurts not so much. So yeah, a shootout I guess wouldn't be ideal if we're thinking about it that way in the sense that the Eagles defense gets few stops. I mean, I could see the Eagles get a few stops.
You
I don't
you
know
have, you
where.
have faith. Do you have faith in the Eagles offense that they can hold up in a shootout? Even with the question of Jalen Hurts' health.
I think they should.
The
Yeah.
idea the idea of a shootout doesn't scare you.
No, no, not necessarily. No, not like maybe a little more than the other option, but I still think they
Okay.
can. They're just
Okay.
that talented.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. So I have a couple of other storylines. I don't want to call them. I mean, one of them is certainly a sidebar, but I have a couple others that aren't necessarily central to the game that I want
Mhm.
to go through. But I want to know if there's any other matchups or any other aspects of the game specifically you want to break down before we move on.
Um.
And obviously, we're closing out with predictions today, so that'll
Yeah.
come a little bit later.
Yeah. No, I feel like we've covered pretty much all of it
Yeah, I think
matchup
I think
wise.
we've hit I think we've hit most of the main points here. So, um, I'll run these by you, and I'll start out with a little bit more of a serious one. But I brought this up a little bit last week, and the reason I'm kind of bringing it up again is because Howie Roseman was asked about it, I believe, yesterday. But the Josh Sills situation still hasn't really. There's been no developments yet, and I still just question, could this be something that's in the back of some of these players' minds? I know he certainly wasn't a star player. I know he wasn't a central figure. I think he only played 4 snaps on the season as a whole, but still practicing with this team week in and week out. He's a guy you see in the locker room day in and day out. And for this to kind of come about, I'm sure there were guys that were close with him in the locker room. It's hard for me to believe this isn't something that's in the back of your mind, and it makes me think a little bit, just a little bit, about back when the Chiefs were playing the the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and Andy Reid's son got arrested for the incident that involved a motor vehicle crash. I don't remember everything that went into it, but I'm pretty sure he was driving under intoxication.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things when you look back on it, the fact that happened the week leading up to the Super Bowl. It's similar that the Sills thing, everything kind of broke with it 2 weeks prior to the Super Bowl, and it's just hard for me to believe that someone that's that close with the team, somebody that's that involved with the team, and obviously someone who's in the locker room and is having interactions with these players day in and day out, that it's not in the back of their mind to a certain degree.
Yeah, it certainly might be, especially for the offensive linemen, like you said, who see him. I mean, they have meetings together and watch film and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like for them, it might be a bit harder. For other players who are closer, maybe not offensive linemen. I feel like it could be in the back of their minds, but at the end of the day, I feel like Nick Sirianni's been, and Jalen Hurts too, have been, like the job's not finished. Focus on the task at hand. There's one more win they need to get, and obviously that's a lot easier said than done to really fully believe in that when you have something like this that just happened so recently. I mean, we won't really know if it affects them during the game.
Yeah, there's gonna be no way to know for sure if it's an impact, but you just wonder if it's one of those things like are they 100% locked in? And I'm sure when this game comes around, the players are going to try to put it to the back of their mind. And I'm actually curious if anybody has asked the players about it at all. And Howie Roseman immediately just kind of shut it down, saying he wasn't going to comment on something that's an ongoing legal investigation. But just something, I thought back to that Super Bowl a couple years ago with Andy Reid's son, and it made me think about this in kind of a similar light. Maybe it's not to the same degree because it was a backup player, not someone on the coaching staff who is involved with the game planning, and obviously the son of the head coach.
Yeah.
But I don't know, just something that I thought was maybe a storyline that perhaps isn't getting enough attention, isn't being questioned enough about as it comes to that. But we can move on to kind of the more fun sidebar story that I have. Ricardo, I'm a big halftime show guy. Are you excited for this Rihanna halftime show or what?
I definitely am, more so than last year.
Really? More excited than last year's show?
I would say so. Yeah, it's Rihanna. Like everyone, or as Peter Schrager said it, Rihanna. But it's like I don't know. Apparently, that's how she goes by. But I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's like Rihanna's got so many good songs. I know she's not all that relevant now necessarily. She's not really putting out music right now. But I mean, it just brings me back to like middle school days almost, and like sort of beginning of high school sort of stuff. It's just like I feel like those are all bops, all those songs. Like I don't know. I'm feeling like pretty, like I haven't thought about it that much, but it's gonna be, I think it'll be cool.
I think the bops is a good way to put it, because like she's got a lot of songs that I'm sure will perform. I've never seen her live or anything, but a lot of songs that I feel like can go like well at a performance like this. All right, I want to ask you this. This is a more fun question. All right. So since we've known each other, we've witnessed 4 Super Bowls. This will be the 4th Super Bowl we've witnessed together or been around or known each other since.
Yeah.
In those 4 Super Bowls, we've had the halftime show, Shakira and J-Lo. We've had the weekend. We've had last year's that was the whole crew of Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, that whole crew. And now we're getting Rihanna this year. I'm not talking about the quality of them, but your excitement level going into them. Rank those 4. Which were you most excited for? Which were you least excited for? I know this is going back a little bit because you know what the end product was, but I want to know the excitement level.
Least excited was last year's. I don't think it was bad. It was solid. Just I feel like that was a little like when we were like toddlers almost
It,
when they
it
were
was
like
it
in
was
their.
border. It's hard to say old school when it's '90s rap, but I mean they were. It was kind of an old school show.
They were still hanging around though, like in the 2000s. So I mean, yeah, last year probably least. I don't know, not like it wasn't the worst. Like it was fine. The other ones.
Because I know you've been hyped for the two that are. I know you were hyped for The Weeknd. I know you were hyped for Shakira, J Lo. It sounds like you're pretty hyped for Rihanna right now.
I think I was the most hyped for the weekend. I mean, I
Okay.
just love the weekend.
Anything else I would have called cap on if you didn't say The Weeknd was your number one.
Yeah, no, but like for the J Lo and Shakira, I mean, the reason I love that so much was because Bad Bunny and J Balvin came out. I was like I didn't expect that. Like that was sick, and the performance overall I thought was cool. Um, but going into it, I don't know how excited I was.
That's
That's the thing.
that's the thing. I mean, who knows? Maybe maybe somebody comes out that's huge for this Rihanna one that you're a big fan of.
Oh man, I
May-
think
maybe Billy Joel will join her on stage and I'll go bonkers. I mean, what would happen then?
Oh, that'd be crazy. Yeah. Oh my god, I don't know. I think I would have to put Rihanna second, and then J
Okay.
Lo and Shakira. I don't know. I might switch those. Those two are really close, though.
All right. I
I don't know.
respect it. I
Where do you
respect it.
stand on that?
I think I was the most hype. I was also the most hyped for The Weeknd because even though I'm not as big a fan of him as you are, he's one of like I generally have a very old school taste in music.
Yeah,
So you obviously know that. But The Weeknd is one of the newer artists that I really dig and I'm into and I like his stuff. So I was definitely most hyped for him. Dude, I think I was the least hyped for J Lo and Shakira. I was like, all right, like I've always been like, give me more of like the singing stuff. I don't need a full on like dance show that goes
right,
with
right.
it. Don't get me wrong. I like seeing Shakira up there, but that's J Lo and Shakira wasn't. It wasn't. I wasn't counting down the days until they were performing at the halftime show.
Yeah,
I want to say I was a little bit more excited for last year's than I am for this year's.
that's
I think
valid.
there's a
Yeah,
more Rihanna songs that I like and know, but I just think that whole combination of what they had last year, I was like, you know what, this is going to be cool. It's really going to be kind of about the music a little bit more than the whole performance aspect. And they tried
yeah.
to do some cool stuff with last year's, and that's kind of besides the fact. But I think I was more hyped for last year, so I think it went The Weeknd, last year's whole crew, then the Rihanna one this year, and then the I'm excited to see what Rihanna can do, and then the J Lo Shakira one. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm a halftime fiend, and nothing's gonna ever top you two in my mind. So um, that's that. But let's get back to some of the football stuff, and let's crank out these predictions. All right, it's time to get down to business now.
Oh boy.
So we need the final score. Obviously, that's going to be determined whether they cover the spread or not. Currently, the Eagles are favored at 1.5, and then let's do the Super Bowl MVP as well. And I mean, I guess if we want to say, we can add up our score prediction, say whether it's going to go over or under. What I think the total's listed at 50.5 last I checked. So let's do those, and I can go first.
Okay.
I can go first. I mean, you're the Eagles fan here. You go second, so I'll go
Yeah,
first
yeah.
here. I think that this game is kind of going to tail more towards the more of a there's going to be each defense is going to come up with stops at times. I don't see it being a full-blown shootout to a certain degree. I mean, I remember when the Chiefs and Bills were playing earlier in the season, and obviously it's a long time ago, but everybody was saying, "Oh, this is going to be a shootout." And you know what? Both of the defenses kind of stepped up a little bit and got some stops. And obviously the Eagles defense, excuse me, is certainly one of the better ones in the NFL this season. So I think both of these defenses are going to get stops at points, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a lower. I don't want to say a low scoring game, but I think it's going to go over that total of 50.5. I'm going to take the under on that one. Now, that being said, I still do like the Eagles to cover the 1.5, and I like the Eagles to win the game. This is an Eagles team. Up and down their roster is 100% complete. You know what? I've been buying into it all year. I've bought into it throughout the playoffs. Jalen Hurts' health is a little bit of a concern, but I think that the Eagles are going to be able to get the better of the Chiefs. I've been on the Eagles. I've been on that 1.5 for the Eagles since that line came out after the conference championship games, and I'm sticking with it. I have them winning 24-21 over the Chiefs in this Super Bowl, and I have the MVP. You know, you talked about it a little bit. If there's a guy on the defensive side of the football that's winning
Yes.
it's Hassan Reddick. And you know
Oh
what?
my
Even if the
God.
Chiefs are going to try to come up with some ways to stop him, I think that this guy is going to have a game. He should have been a defensive player of the year finalist. I think he's going to have a huge game in this one, and I think he's going to take Andrew Wiley to town. I think this whole Eagles defensive line is going to have a good game and really wreak havoc on Patrick Mahomes. And I think that Hassan Reddick's going to be the centerpiece of that. I think he's going to be the Super Bowl MVP. And like I said, Eagles to win this one and be Super Bowl.
Man, pull out a Von Miller. I was only saying that before. I didn't know you were gonna do that, but I like.
I'm all in on it, bro. I'm all in on it.
All right. So I mean, I've kind of been alluding to this being a shootout. The part of that is because they didn't play each other all season. The first time to be facing off, and I just think the Eagles are offensively is better than it's a matchup nightmare for the Chiefs defense. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be over the what was it, 50.5?
50.5, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to go over that. And I'm going to say 31-27 Eagles. That's kind of high scoring. I think more that's me just being kind of pushing the higher end of the score that I think. I feel like more realistic would be 27-24. That's what I originally had, but I don't know. I just part of me just this could be a shootout. So the Eagles cover, the over hits, and if it's a shootout, the MVP has to be Jalen Hurts. So that's where I stand on it.
Nah, that's true. I mean, if it is a shootout, it's going to be one of the quarterbacks. So I like that. I like how we both kind of have different ideas of how this game goes. We're both picking the Eagles at the end of the day to cover, but I see it as one kind of a battle. You see it as another kind of a battle. And obviously it comes down to different score predictions too. So we'll see how this game unfolds, and hopefully the Eagles can get the job done, man. So is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap things up here?
Oh man, just as we're talking about now, the nerves are starting to settle in.
This is the last time we're talking about the Eagles in this setting until after the game, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm hopefully it's after a Super Bowl win for the Eagles, they're second. If that's the case, I'm definitely gonna be going to that parade. But yeah, man,
I'm coming with you, bro. I'm coming with you for the
culture. Let's go together.
We'll live stream from the parade.
Honestly, yeah, dude. Oh my god. But job's not done, as Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni have said. So one day at a time, and we'll get there to Sunday eventually. And hopefully the Eagles come out on top.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. I'm hoping to be back as early as possible to watch this. I mean, I'm going to be on a bus coming home from a ski race, but it's going to be on my phone until I get back to the house and can shove some chicken wing dip down my gullet and sit in a jock strap and watch this game unfold. So whatever we got to do, I'm amped up for it, dude. I'm amped up for it.
Oh, man, it's going to be great. I can't wait, dude.
Sounds good, bro. Well, go Eagles. I mean, you're hearing that from a Steelers fan, but I've bought into them this year. I'm rooting for them.
Fly, Eagles, fly. Go Birds,
That's how we're ending it. We'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye. Until that happens, like you said, man, job's not done. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.